Section 1. Equality's Promise. India's Constitution and its Daughters. India's Constitution is a beacon of hope. It guarantees equality for all. It promises non-discrimination based on sex. It envisions a just and equitable society. However, this vision remains unfulfilled for millions of Indian women. Despite constitutional safeguards, women face significant barriers to political participation. They are underrepresented at all levels of governance. This underrepresentation has profound implications for democracy itself. The Constitution's framers recognized the importance of women's voices. They included provisions for affirmative action. They sought to create a level playing field, but societal norms and patriarchal structures have hindered progress. The gap between constitutional ideals and the reality for women is stark. This disparity is not just a matter of numbers, it's about the quality of democracy. It's about the ability of women to shape their own destinies. When women are excluded from decision-making, their needs are often ignored. Laws and policies fail to address their concerns. India's commitment to equality remains incomplete. The promise of the Constitution is yet to be fully realized. Until women have an equal say in governing their nation, true democracy remains elusive. The struggle for gender parity is not just a women's issue, it's a national imperative. Section 2. The reality women in the halls of Indian power. The numbers tell a stark story. Women remain severely underrepresented in Indian politics and governance. In parliament and state assemblies, their numbers are far below their proportion of the population. This disparity is even more pronounced in local governance, where crucial decisions about everyday life are made. The judiciary, responsible for interpreting and upholding the Constitution, also reflects this imbalance. Few women occupy the higher echelons of the judicial system. This lack of representation has serious consequences for women seeking justice. Law enforcement agencies, tasked with protecting citizens, also show a stark gender gap. Women remain underrepresented in the police force, particularly in leadership positions. This disparity undermines their ability to effectively address crimes against women. The reasons for this underrepresentation are complex and multifaceted. They range from deeply ingrained societal norms and patriarchal attitudes to a lack of political will and support. Overcoming these barriers is essential to realizing the full potential of Indian democracy. Section 3. A broken mirror, reflecting on legitimacy and representation. Democracy derives its legitimacy from representing the will of the people. When a significant portion of the population is systematically excluded from this process, the very foundation of democracy is weakened. India's low representation of women in governance poses a serious challenge to its democratic legitimacy. The absence of women's voices in decision-making processes undermines the quality of those decisions. Laws and policies are more likely to be holistic and responsive to the needs of all citizens when women have an equal say in their formulation. Furthermore, the lack of female role models in positions of power perpetuates the cycle of underrepresentation. It sends a message that women's voices are not valued, discouraging them from aspiring to leadership roles. This absence of diverse perspectives weakens the fabric of Indian democracy. It creates a system that is less responsive, less accountable, and ultimately less representative of its people. Addressing this imbalance is not just about fairness, it's about strengthening the very core of India's democratic values. Section 4. Justice gendered when laws fail half the nation. The underrepresentation of women in the legal and law enforcement systems has direct and detrimental consequences for women's access to justice. Laws and policies, often crafted without their input, may not adequately address the unique challenges they face. This is particularly evident in cases of violence against women. Reporting mechanisms, investigative procedures, and judicial processes often lack a gender-sensitive approach. This can lead to insensitive treatment, victim blaming, and a lower likelihood of perpetrators being held accountable. The lack of female representation within the police force further exacerbates these challenges. Moreover, laws relating to marriage, divorce, inheritance, and property rights often disadvantage women. These laws, rooted in patriarchal norms, can trap women in abusive relationships, deny them economic independence, and perpetuate cycles of poverty. Without adequate representation in the institutions responsible for upholding their rights, women are left vulnerable and marginalized. Their voices remain unheard, their experiences unacknowledged, and their access to justice severely compromised. Section 5. The Cycle of Silence. How underrepresentation perpetuates itself. The underrepresentation of women in Indian governance is not a standalone issue. It is deeply entangled with a web of social, cultural, and political factors that reinforce each other, creating a vicious cycle that perpetuates the status quo. This cycle begins with deeply ingrained patriarchal norms that relegate women to the domestic sphere. These norms are often reinforced through social conditioning, limiting girls' access to education and opportunities. This, in turn, restricts their ability to develop the skills and confidence necessary for political leadership. The lack of female role models in positions of power further perpetuates this cycle. Without visible examples of women successfully navigating the political landscape, aspiring female leaders may feel discouraged, lacking the mentorship and support crucial for navigating these male-dominated spaces. This creates a self-fulfilling prophecy where the absence of women in power reinforces the social structures that limit their access to power. Breaking this cycle requires a multifaceted approach that addresses not just the symptoms, but the root causes of this systemic underrepresentation. Section 6. Beyond numbers. The need for substantive representation. While increasing the number of women in positions of power is crucial, it is not enough. True equality requires substantive representation, where women are not merely tokens, but active agents of change. This means creating an environment where they can freely voice their perspectives, challenge existing norms, and influence policy decisions. Achieving substantive representation requires addressing the systemic barriers that prevent women from fully participating in the political sphere. This includes tackling gender stereotypes, providing equal access to education and resources, and creating supportive networks and mentorship opportunities. Furthermore, it necessitates reforming political party structures to be more inclusive and supportive of women candidates. This includes addressing issues like candidate selection processes, campaign financing, and the prevalence of patronage and dynasty politics, which often disadvantage women. Substantive representation is not about ticking boxes, but about transforming power structures to be truly inclusive. It is about ensuring that women's voices are not just heard, but actively shape the decisions that affect their lives and the future of their nation. Section 7. The Power of the Vote. Women's participation in Indian elections. Despite the underrepresentation in positions of power, women in India have made significant strides in exercising their right to vote. Voter turnout among women has been steadily increasing over the years, often surpassing that of men. This demonstrates their growing political awareness and their determination to make their voices heard. However, translating this electoral participation into political representation remains a challenge. Various factors, including social pressures, lack of support from political parties, and intimidation tactics, often hinder women from contesting elections. Efforts to address these challenges are crucial. This includes promoting women's leadership within political parties, providing them with the necessary training and resources, and ensuring a level playing field during elections. The increasing political participation of women as voters is a positive sign. It underscores the need for the system to respond to their aspirations by creating pathways for their meaningful representation at all levels of governance. Section 8. A roadmap for change recommendations for a more inclusive democracy. Addressing the underrepresentation of women in Indian democracy requires a multi-pronged approach that tackles both the supply and demand sides of the equation. On the supply side, this means empowering more women to enter politics by providing them with the necessary skills, resources, and support systems. This includes investing in girls' education, promoting leadership training programs for women, and establishing mentorship initiatives that connect aspiring female politicians with experienced leaders. It also involves addressing the social and cultural barriers that discourage women from pursuing political careers. On the demand side, efforts should focus on creating a more conducive environment for women in politics. This includes reforming electoral processes to make them more inclusive and addressing the issue of violence against women in politics. Furthermore, political parties must be encouraged and, in some cases, mandated to promote women's leadership within their ranks. This can be achieved through measures like quotas for women in party leadership positions and candidate lists. Section 9. International Inspirations. Learning from global best practices. India can draw inspiration from countries that have made significant progress in promoting women's political participation. Rwanda, for example, has the highest proportion of women in parliament globally, achieved through a combination of legislative quotas and societal shifts towards gender equality. Similarly, Scandinavian countries have successfully implemented policies that support work-life balance, making it easier for women to participate in politics. These include affordable childcare, generous parental leave policies, and flexible work arrangements. Learning from these international best practices can provide valuable insights for India. While directly replicating models may not be feasible, adapting successful strategies to the Indian context can pave the way for significant progress. This involves studying the impact of various interventions, understanding the contextual factors that contributed to their success, and tailoring those learnings to address the specific challenges faced by women in Indian politics. Section 10. Towards an India for all: the urgency of gender parity in governance. Achieving gender parity in Indian governance is not simply a matter of fairness or social justice, although those are crucial considerations. It is about strengthening the very fabric of Indian democracy and ensuring its long-term health and vibrancy. When women are excluded from decision-making processes, their perspectives, needs, and experiences are overlooked, resulting in policies that fail to address the concerns of a significant portion of the population. This not only undermines the legitimacy of democratic institutions, but also hinders the nation's progress. India cannot achieve its full potential as a just and equitable society if half its population remains marginalized in the political sphere. The journey towards true and inclusive democracy in India requires a collective effort. It demands a commitment from all stakeholders: the government, political parties, civil society organizations, and individuals, to dismantle the barriers that prevent women from taking their rightful place as equal partners in shaping the nation's destiny. The time for action is now.